Mary O'Mahony here is going to give an outline of the events here in Dripsey. And Mary is also, after putting together an exhibition on the Local Ambush, which happened 100 years ago, next weekend, which will be in the Kilmurry Museum where he started out today. And that will be on next weekend, and it will be on for a month. Is that right, Mary? Until the end of September. And there's also, she's written a book as well about the events at the Local Ambush. So that book and the exhibition will be our next project. So without further ado, Mary will give you the outline here now of the Dripsey Ambush. Okay, thank you very much.
The Dripsey Ambush is best remembered as one of the main military reversals of the War of Independence in County Cork, along with Mourne and Clonmult. In each of these ambushes, informers were blamed for disclosing to the Crown forces the position of the IRA. February 1921 was described by Liam Deasy, West Cork Brigade Commander, as Cork's Black Month. This month witnessed the execution of the Dripsey volunteers and the reversals of Mourne and Clonmult ambushes. Dripsey Ambush resulted in the death of 5 volunteers by execution and a 6th volunteer due to wounds received at the ambush. The Dripsey Ambush and Mrs. Lindsay are interlinked in the narration of the 6th Battalion activities. The 6th Battalion area ranged from Blarney, Courtbrack and Granagh to the east and the mountainous area of Dunamore and Rylan in the north. The western boundary included Habollock and Coachford villages, extending to Inniscarra parish in the south, bordering the garrison town of Ballincollig. During 1920, volunteers boycotted the RIC and attacked RIC barracks. As the RIC abandoned smaller barracks in the area and moved into larger barracks, the volunteers burned the evacuated barracks in the battalion area. These included barracks at Coachford, Rylan, Dunamore, Blarney, Granagh and Dripsey. This resulted in a large tract of land having no RIC presence, which made it easier for the IRA to stage ambushes on Crown forces. From mid-1920, the 6th Battalion laid ambushes at Dunamore, Clonmoyle and Kilcullen, but despite laying in wait for several hours, no Crown forces came. On the 1st of September, an ambush was laid on the Inniscarra-Ballincollig road. That is the road that we would have travelled when we went across the narrow bridge called Inniscarra Bridge and turned to our left. So they laid an ambush there on the 1st of September, which was quite near to Ballincollig town, which housed the Manchester Regiment in the Army Barracks and also had an RIC barracks there. Despite careful planning, the tree trunk that was due to fall and trap the lorry did not fall, and the driver of the lorry increased speed to escape the attack. During a brigade meeting in mid-December 1920, following the success of Kilmichael ambush, the destruction caused by the burning of Cork City and the introduction of martial law, Sean O'Hegarty, Brigade OC, asked Jackie O'Leary, OC of the 6th Battalion, what's happening in your area, Jackie? The pressure was on to stage a successful ambush in the battalion area. Most Fridays, Crown forces travelled along this road from Macroom to Ballincollig between 9 and 11 o'clock. This area would be selected for the attack as it was midway between both towns. In early January 1921, Sean O'Hegarty, along with Jackie O'Leary and Frank Bustede, walked this site, noting the high vantage points where scouts could be located and the sharp bend in the road. So 100 years ago, that forestry at your back there was not there, so that was just all farmland. The trees behind us, well, there was some cover there wasn't the same amount of trees that are there today. So Sean O'Hegarty noted that on the eastern flank, which is here, the road we just travelled, it was precautions would need to be made at this area, so they decided to dig
so that they would keep the IRA men secure. The date for the ambush was set for Friday, the 28th of January 1921. The night before the ambush, the column moved south from their training camp in Dunamore. Scouts from the local Coachford and Inniscarra companies were posted as lookouts for enemy activity. 20 volunteers from the Inniscarra company dug the trench on the northern side of the road at the eastern flank to strengthen this area. Their plan was to first cut trees partially, which would be then held upright by ropes. Once the first lorry had passed through the ambush site, Captain Milan, who was captain of the Inniscarra company, would release the ropes trapping the army tenders in between. In the meantime, local scouts from Coachford manned positions to the western end of the ambush site and barricaded the south end of the ambush, which is the side road that lots of you have now just parked in, thus blocking a potential escape route down this side road. Inniscarra company had a scout at the central observation post high on Fergus Hill, which is the hill directly across from us there. At Dripsey Road, there was a blocking party to ensure that this road remained closed. So therefore, it was decided that the position, most of the volunteers on the northern side of the road, with 2 or 3 volunteers on the south, because cover on the south side of the road was quite scarce, and there was potential for the IRA attackers to be caught in the crossfire. The ambush site was now protected from the east, the west, the south and the north, with scouts at the north of the ambush site as well. Jack Manning, captain of the Dunamore company, commanded a section of 12 men at the eastern flank of the ambush site. The remainder of the column, under OC, Jackie O'Leary and Frank Bustede, were extended over 150 yards towards Coachford on Manning's right. All sections were in place by 6:30 in the morning, so they waited for the enemy convoy to arrive from the west. Volunteer Dennis Murphy later recalled, "We stayed in the position all day. It was bitterly cold, and part of the time there was a drizzly, sleety rain. We were frozen." Whilst the ambush party waited for the enemy's arrival, the planned ambush was a talking point in Coachford village. School children were sent home to prevent them being caught up in any crossfire or fighting. Locals sent word to the volunteers that the ambush was being talked about openly in the village. New intelligence came from Coachford around 1:30 p.m. when Father Shinnick sent a messenger to the ambush site advising them to leave the ambush site as the British had been informed. Father Shinnick was well known for his anti-IRA sentiments and often preached against the IRA during his sermons. The IRA officers quickly convened a Council of War meeting to deliberate this information. Was this a ruse by the priest to get them out of the ambush, or was it the truth? Bustede wanted to proceed with the planned ambush, and most of the officers agreed with him. Quartermaster Jim Barrett believed that they should heed the advice of the priest and retreat. The decision was taken to remain and to continue to wait for the enemy convoy as planned, and to retire at 4:30 under the cover of darkness. By 4 p.m, O'Leary decided to call the retreat. When ordering Captain Milan on the eastern flank to ensure that the tree was knocked completely so that it didn't fall on anyone, enemy soldiers were observed advancing across the fields from the eastern flank on the main road in the fields to the north and the south. O'Leary gave the order, "Retreat, we are surrendered." Volunteer Dennis Dwyer testified in his witness statement that the line of retreat lay up high ground through a ploughed field which was under enemy fire. The gate at the end of the laneway was locked by the owner, who was hostile to the IRA. Jackie O'Leary led the retreat of the volunteers at the eastern flank. Bustede withdrew with the main group in a northwestern direction. He planned to position a section in the ditch to provide covering fire for the rearguard party, led by Quartermaster Jim Barrett. The rearguard party included Thomas O'Brien, Patrick O'Mahony, Timothy McCarthy, Dennis Murphy, Daniel O'Callaghan and John O'Mahony. John Lyons, manning the lookout post at the north of the ambush position, reported to Bustede that two large parties of enemy troops were advancing in a southerly direction and would surround the ambush party. The column's only option available to them was to retreat west through the ploughed field. However, this meant that they were unable to provide covering fire for the rearguard party. At least 5 volunteers were wounded and captured while crossing the ploughed field. The IRA ambushers had now been ambushed. 2 wounded casualties were more fortunate, as they escaped from the ambush site by being carried away by their comrades. Captain Frank Crowley of the Coachford Company avoided capture by his quick thinking. On entering the ploughed field, he ran to the horses and ploughmen. He threw his rifle into the furrow, instructed the ploughman to lead the horses, and he commenced ploughing. He stayed ploughing until darkness fell. The Crown forces deployed at Dripsey Cross were between 65 and 70 men, including 5 officers. On receiving a tip-off detailing the whereabouts of the ambush site, the patrol left Ballincollig Barracks at 3:30, arriving at Dripsey Ambush at 4 o'clock, undetected by local scouts. The British dismounted at Dripsey Cross, where they drilled for 20 minutes, and Lieutenant Colonel Evans outlined the pincer attack. The patrol was divided into 5 sections. The plan was that the British would encircle the ambush party from all sides in a classic pincer movement. Volunteer Dennis Dwyer visited this site 2 days afterwards, and he said, "I was amazed how we got out without being completely wiped out, as the enemy had all the advantages. I had personally experienced some very tough and trying situations in France in 1916 and 1917, but this, while it lasted, surpassed them all."
There were 10 prisoners rounded up: James Barrett, Thomas O'Brien, Patrick O'Mahony, Daniel O'Callaghan, Timothy McCarthy, John Rhines, Eugene Lantry, Jeremiah O'Callaghan, Dennis Murphy and Dennis Sheehan. Now, Eugene Lantry and Dennis Sheehan were innocent bystanders. They had no involvement with the IRA. 5 of the men were injured, with James Barrett and Dennis Murphy seriously wounded. A large quantity of weapons were captured. The prisoners were loaded onto trucks and then taken to Ballincollig. On the following Monday, the 31st of January, the 10 prisoners were transferred to Cork Detention Barracks, located in Victoria Barracks, Cork, to await trial. The wounded prisoners, James Barrett and Dennis Murphy, were sent to the hospital wing of the barracks. The Field General Court-Martial opened on Tuesday, the 8th of February, in Victoria Barracks, and the men were charged with committing an offence in that near Dripsey, in the county of Cork, on the 28th of January 1921, they did levy war against His Majesty by attacking, with other persons unknown, a detachment of His Majesty's forces. The court-martial lasted
days, resulting in Jeremiah O'Callaghan, Eugene Lantry and Dennis Sheehan were being acquitted. The remaining 5 men were sentenced to be executed. In the meantime, the battalion had found out that Mrs. Maria Lindsay of Leamount House, Coachford, had informed the military in Ballincollig of the ambush plans. Mrs. Lindsay and her driver, James Clark, were taken hostage by the IRA in mid-February and held as prisoners. The IRA pressured her to send letters to General Strickland telling him that she would be killed if the Dripsey men were not released. Crown forces searched the entire battalion area looking for Mrs. Lindsay, and she had to be moved several times to avoid detection. The IRA men were not released. On the morning of the 28th of February, the men were executed in pairs. John Allen, who was originally from County Tipperary and had been imprisoned in the detention centre, aged 26, was executed with Daniel O'Callaghan, aged 23, at 8:05 in the morning. Thomas O'Brien, aged 20, and Patrick O'Mahony, aged 23, were executed at 8:20 hours. And finally, John Lyons, aged 23, and Timothy McCarthy, aged 20, were executed at 8:30 hours. That evening, Sean O'Hegarty, Brigade Commander, instructed the IRA to go out in Cork City and attack British soldiers, and that evening 6 British soldiers were killed and another 6 were wounded. The papers the following morning, in the curfew notice in the paper, noted that it was a quiet evening, so even back then there was false news being reported. Quartermaster James Barrett would die in military hospital from his wounds in March, and Dennis Murphy would be acquitted. Mrs. Lindsay and James Clark, her chauffeur, were killed by the IRA following the executions of the IRA men. Their bodies were buried, and their location, even today, remains unknown. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Michael Looney, Bearings, to come. He's involved in the...
I think that was the most comprehensive report and oration I heard for a long time in here, so I think she deserves a bowl of us again. I think absolutely brilliant. I'd also like to welcome you all here, in particular the Kilmurry Historical and Society. As you can see, this ambush place is under reconstruction at the moment. We're trying to get it together for the big day the centenary is on, and the centenary falls on the exact date, the 28th of February 21. So I'm cordially inviting each and every one of you here on that day. I hope that is going to be that COVID, I hope that it can go on, number one, and I think it's very important to remember locally the people that put their country before themselves and contributed to the freedom which we are enjoying today. And that freedom, as you know, it costs lives, but that's what we're respecting them and acknowledging all their contribution throughout the years in every different locality. From there are about hundreds of them around the country, but not for them we may not have the freedom which we're enjoying today. So hopefully on that 28th of February we'll see you here again, and hopefully you'll support us. Going to meet a Mahagat.
Thanks to Mary and to Michael also, and if you want to make your way to the car, thanks as well also to the Gardaí who are on duty here now and keeping things under control. So we are parked far away, so we'll wait. We'll bring them up, the cars from here, and we'll all come together and go to Carrigadrohid, which is only from here, it's only 10 minutes. Okay? And yeah, there's a car park in the pub, and you can park there. So we'll go for Carrig, we'll be there, including... So the man that's going to talk to us now is another well-known local man, great man for recording the history of this area and many areas. He writes in the Lee Valley, has many photos, the Lee Valley Outlook magazine, and he's just a man that's recording everything, you know, that passes by, and discreet. You would know he's there, but at the same time his knowledge is vast. And I'd like you to give a very warm welcome to Mr. Peter Scanlan. Thank you. Oh yeah.
Who's going to take a photo of him?
It's all right. I'm glad not going to. They have one from my. They have one from my memorial castle. That's right. I suppose the difficult thing with this is to follow on the footsteps of the two speakers we had already today, Sean Crowley and Mary Mahoney, both at Crossbarry and Dripsey, and I feel a bit, I know, inadequate, or what's the word, that I can't, intimidated, I think that's the word actually, do this. I suppose the biggest problem with this is that Michael didn't mention, but the short notice was a bit of a problem, all right. But I had honey, last night was the only time I had it to clean up. So I suppose years ago I heard a story about this man. He worked in Guinness's brewery in Dublin, and one day he had been working there all his life, and he was coming near to retirement age, and one day he was up on top of one of these big bats that was holding the valuable brew, and he was cleaning the top of it, and he fell in. And one of his buddies down below on the ground heard the splash and went up, and they looked in, and he was inside and he was praying. And the prayer he was saying was, he looked up at the ceiling and said, Lord, he said, give me a mouth worthy for the occasion. So my prayer now at this moment in time is, Lord, give me a mouth worthy for the occasion. So here we are in the vicinity of the shadow of Carrigadrohid Castle. We have the bridge here across, which gives the village its name, Carrigadrohid, the rock of the bridge. And the earliest recorded date, I think, for the bridge. Now, you'd have to excuse me in this, I haven't read all my own notes, so even though he might be hearing some things for the first time, I myself might be hearing some of the stuff I'm saying for the first time as well, because I might be saying things that I'm not supposed to be saying. But the earliest recording of a bridge here, I think, was 1573. And that time it would have been a timber bridge. And the fact that the area is called Carrigadrohid, the rock of the bridge, but there's a rock in the centre of the river where the castle is, and the bridge would have been a timber bridge spanning from this bank to the rock, and then from the rock to the other side. It made it easy to build the bridge there as compared maybe to any other where along the river banks. So that's the time. Then the castle was built in 1455, I think. I don't quite remember, but I think it was around that. 1455, and it was built by the McCarthys of Musgrave. And I don't think you see the castle from here, you can't see it very well, but the original castle was a tower house, which would be a square tower house, possibly a story tall, higher than it is today, and a square tower. It's rectangular now at the moment with an extension out here, but it would have been a square tower, probably a story higher. That fact is disputed by different experts, but and that was in the 1400s. In the 1500s it was extended, and the extension was done by they removed the wall, the eastern wall here of the square tower, and they added on a similar block onto it. So instead of being a square tower, it was a rectangular tower, which would double the room space that was in the original. The bridge would still have been a timber bridge going across to the other side of the river up to Bin. The bridge is supposed to date from the building of the castle. Not sure is from the original building or from the extensions that were built, but probably the original building. The two arches on this side here are round arches, and the masonry that's in them is considered to be the same masonry type as the castle itself. On the far side of the bridge, then there are two pointed arches, which are contradicting what is here, and there was a bad flood. And then I failed last night to find my notes on the bridge. Even though I told Michael I would talk on the bridge, I failed to find my notes on it, and I think it was the 3rd of November 1853. There was a terrible flood, and it took away it took two arches of Castle Street Bridge in Macroom, and if any of you are down the castle, down the pitch and put grounds and look up at the bridge, you can see the very same type of bridges we have here. We have the round arches, which are the old bridge, and then the pointed arches, which are the new part. So it took away that. It took away the Kilmurry Bridge. Well, it says the new bridge a mile outside the town, so I reckon that was Kilmurry Bridge. It took away two arches of Patrick Street Bridge in Cork, and that night there is a report in the papers on it, and the commentaries by local people, commentary on the sound of the flood and the river, and eventually the bridge collapsed. The bridge, no, what else do I say about the bridge? The bridge was rebuilt, and there's a little story. Some piece more. The bridge was, there was a hole blown at the time of the Troubles, in the time of the War of Independence, to block transport over it, and apparently it was passable on foot, but one side you were passed by the wall, and one side, whereas the other half of the bridge was gone. And there were timber planks put across for people to pass back and forth. And there's a story told to somebody local here who had a dead horse, and he was taking the horse over to Forest, to the foxhounds. I presume maybe they paid for dead animals, I don't know at the time, but that's what he was going. He had the horse inside in some kind of a vehicle, the horse-drawn vehicle, and going across the timber construction. The timber construction collapsed, and he had two dead horses when he got to the other side of the river. So that's just another little patch. Again, if you go down the bank of the river, in the other side, you won't see it on the other side, you can see the concrete, where the concrete was poured to repair the bridge when the Troubles were over. I should mention as well, I gave a similar talk here a number of years ago to Mallow, I think Mallow Historical Society, and they told me that on the same night Mallow Bridge was taken as well by the flood. So that was before any talk of global warming or droughts or floods or all these things we're hearing about nowadays. So that's about the bridge. Now going back to the castle, from the other side it's possible to see gun nooks and so on. The inside of the castle, all the experts, well sorry, I shouldn't say all the experts, any experts that I've heard talking about and met here over the years, they all have a different interpretation of the inside, because it has been repaired, it has been modified, it was probably vaulted at one stage. The original building was probably vaulted. They were the vaults were removed when the extension was built onto it. The first extension was built onto it, and there was a major split down the wall in the west gable in there, and it's the same. There's paintings of the castle in the 1700s, 1775 I think, and that split is there at that time. So the experts tell us that split was caused by the vault, that when the vault was in the castle, it was shoving out the walls and caused the split, and then when the vault was removed, the walls didn't move anything more, they're still staying where they are. Now, what else after that? There was a third phase of building then, which is this extension out here that's built on to it here. It's still very obvious on this side, you can see it better from the road. This is built on, and this was mainly a stairwell or a staircase going right up to all the floors of the castle. Oh yes, before I go to that, I just want to finish about the bridge. The bridge was built. When the bridge was built, then the stone bridge was built, it closed up what was the original door going into the base of the castle. The door was, the bridge is up, halfway up the castle now, so the original door was going in from the timber bridge, going in down at practically water level. it goes up that. They put steps going down from the road down to the basement of the castle, and then steps going up again to the next floor. When the on that, I mentioned about the road, the bridge being at water level. When some years ago they were doing repairs there to the lodge, and when the builders were working here, they called me one day to call in to see what they were doing. They had found something, and at the back of the lodge they were digging a basement to an extension that they were building on. There wasn't a basement to the lodge as it was, but then they were adding an extension, they were building a basement to it. And underneath the basement, when they went down, maybe 7 or 8 feet, they found what appeared to be the remains of a roadway, which would mean that the roadway coming down from the grotto down the hill went very steeply down to the river bank and then came across this way. Now, that's a kind of a plausible theory. Again, the amount of gravel that was in that road was very little, so I would have questions put in. If it wasn't, what was it? I don't know. But it did look very like a roadway, and it would match that it was going down, because the road now is up maybe 10 or 12 feet above what the original bridge would have been. Now, the extension here then on this side was built in the 100 years later roughly. That was built really to house a staircase, and when they built that in, I think the experts used the word mined, but they dug holes through the walls into the different floors up along, so that from the staircase they could go into the different rooms. The staircase took up the most of the extension. It was a massive staircase, and as far as I know, and again, somebody might have information on this, or maybe I maybe I'm completely wrong, but as far as I know, that staircase ended up in Dripsey Castle when the castle here was taken out of use as habitation. It was a circular a spiral staircase, timber staircase. I don't know what it looked like, but it was massive, and we'll say for the building and for the period of time, it was quite an elaborate structure apparently by the way. There's one other little feature as well in the castle here. If you look closely from that side there, looking over the water, you can see there's an archway there on the wall, and that appears to be that the owners of the castle at the time, the Bones, wanted to have a sort of a private entrance where they could go in and out, that they wouldn't be mixing with the local people crossing the bridge. You know? So they wanted to have their own private entrance. So there probably was a timber bridge from that archway out here. Now the interesting thing is that if you go inside, there's no trace of the archway, and the castle is completely full of that kind of thing, where you have windows on the outside, you have nothing in the inside, because it has been changed and modified over the years, and there's a shell of masonry built up against the old walls inside, particularly where they believe the vaulting was, because they built up a shell and then they covered, changed windows and doors and things, etc. Now, I'm going so far now looking at the notes, Holly, so probably 90% of what I said mightn't be actually correct. That'll cheer you up now for the day. Right. The dating for this extension is because the dating is the windows, and pretty there's 2 windows up what would be in the attic, and the design of the windows and them are of that period. Coming back to the history of the castle, it is a tall house similar to most other castles. I think I more or less covered the rest of it. There would have been a wooden bridge set here covering giving access to it. Built in 1455. Right. Now the Bones owned the castle, and they lived here until about 70. It's recorded that they lived here that John Bone lived here in 1750. Now these bones would be the same as the bones of Bones Court, and what's her name is Elizabeth Bone, what's the writer? She's the writer. Is she Elizabeth Bond? Is it Elizabeth? Yeah. Is it this year? Just the name doesn't sound right to me. I just maybe. They'd be the same bones, and they lived here, and it's recorded that they were living here in 1750. But in 1777, the man by the name of Bellinger made a painting of the castle, and there is the roof has gone off of it. There's grass growing off the walls, so they must have left it very shortly after that account of 1750. Right. Now the bones then left here and they went to Oak Grove, which is over the road there, about half a mile over, and I suppose it's in the news at the moment. Somebody might have seen it on the paper during the past week or so. Can you remember what the sale price is recommended at the moment? 3 million or something like that. Okay. So it's up for sale if anybody want to buy a summer residence or something just down the road here. If you have 3 million hanging around or something around that, you might get it for a little bit less. Right. Now, across before I mentioned about Oak Grove again, across the road here we have what is known as Castle Cottage, and it's owned by the Ring family at the moment. It was owned by, I haven't the names with me. The previous owner would be Professor O'Sullivan, the doctor. It would be his home.